Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to Roundtable, coming to you live from Beijing. I am He Yang, joined by Lai Ming and Tony Reed. Good as always to have you join us. We have some fascinating topics for discussion today and every day. On today's program, small businesses have been through some really tough times since the coronavirus outbreak. Many struggle to keep the lights on. The coronavirus appears, disappears, and threats to reappear again is how it feels here in China. And that's just the public health reality we're all getting familiar with. How can we get the help to those who need it the most? Also on the menu, we're on a mission of starting your week with the motivational kick. Don't miss out on our most inspirational segment, Motivational Monday. You can find us on Apple Podcast at Roundtable China. Subscribe, rate, and review us. If you like us, tell a friend about us. It will help other folks to find the show and also boost the ratings. But first, on today's Roundtable. 2020 has been a roller coaster ride for so many individuals and businesses alike. Just as you thought you've passed one speed bump, comes another one. Many small businesses, especially the ones that are public-facing, may feel their fate is in the grips of the pandemic. 2020 alone, over 1 million small shops and stores have closed long-term or permanently. The COVID-19 situation has been further contained, and now we take a check-in on how small businesses are doing. So, Lai Ming, could you give us a general overview and maybe an update as well?
Sure. We've been following the stories ever since COVID-19 broke out, and we knew that small businesses are going to be hit hard. And now today we have some more information about where they are and what kind of trouble they are in throughout the year. Data from Chi-Cha-Cha, which is a platform delivering business data, show that 3.01 million small stores or shops got their business licenses revoked or cancelled or transferred to other enterprises from January to November 2020. And their data analyst, Cui Fang, said even not counting mobile street vendors and online shops, over 1 million small shops and stores closed down. And there are some patterns in this as well. More of these small businesses were sort of suspended or closed down in eastern coastal regions than in in the west of the country. The top three provinces with the most stores that got licenses revoked or cancelled were Jiangsu, Guangdong, and Shandong. And then more small businesses in scenic areas and commercial streets were hit harder than, let's say, other places. Small shops in communities mainly met the daily needs of residents and were least affected. So now this much we know, and that is the small businesses, they tend to thrive in places where there's a huge crowd. Talking about scenic areas, tourist attractions, and then commercial streets as well. Well, the case with scenic areas, scenic spots, we know tourists come pouring in, and they have to eat, they have to buy stuff, they have to bring presents back home, so they spend. And so that makes a lot of sense when tourism stood still for the most part of the epidemic control and prevention period. And then the commercial streets, I would think that maybe CBD or downtown areas, you would think office workers who barely had time to cook for themselves. We're talking about breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Mm-hmm. So when you have most office workers working from home and they're buying stuff in their communities or online, obviously they're establishments that were previously in there might experience some trouble. Mm-hmm. It could be a retail store, it could be a convenience store, it could also be just a food cart selling falafels, as it is the case in New York. So this much we know. I mean, a lot of these small businesses, they were hit hard, and they were hit hard in densely populated areas. They were hit hard in places where there used to be a lot of traffic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2020 has been a nightmare for anybody who's had a business. And I remember reading a lot of reports, mainly from like the Washington Post, New York Times, about New York. And that's when we were having those discussions where we felt like where we weren't sure if going out to eat was ever going to be on the table, and
Right.
there's like a lot of restaurants shutting down, forever. And so it's just this new normal. I think everybody is really trying to adjust, and like Young, you mentioned earlier that this COVID thing just keeps kind of going away a little bit, and it's kind of emotional. It like goes away a little bit and then it comes back, and we're not really sure how to. And a lot of people still are not going out and doing leisure activities, which I think Liming, you mentioned. A lot of people like to be around other people, spend money and go out to eat and go and buy certain things, but that's just not happening these days. So I think, a lot of businesses are, suffering because of that.
Yeah, definitely. And just by Liming's explanation and giving us all the details about what's going on with the small businesses, I also realized that the shops that have been closed and have been detected by this platform, they're all brick and mortar stores. So
Right.
when you're a small business and also you're a brick and mortar storefront, and that just almost makes things worse or more difficult to survive during a pandemic. And this is definitely an issue that governments around the world are all looking into, because with small businesses, that's the lifeblood, and you can even call it the backbone of economy. And also small businesses absorb so many
Jobs. They create so many jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So that is definitely a key part of the economy. And before we go into, I suppose, solutions and where does the future lie, that kind of thing, what are the types of stores that might be a bit more vulnerable given the economic and public health climate it is right now?
Well, those that have been in the business for less than 5 years are more likely to be severely hit by COVID. According to the data, 69.4% of the small stores that got licenses revoked and cancelled in 2020 had been operating for less than 5 years. In other words, if you've been in the business for longer than that period of time, then you probably have a little bit of money in the banks. You may have some kind of connections or a base of consumers to support you. I've heard people saying that they're willing to drive hours, or they're willing to go the extra mile to visit a store that they used to and then whose owner they know, just so they can prop up their business. And I think for businesses that have only been there for less than 5 years, I think they are in a particularly vulnerable position. And then those that have fewer connections with people's basic life, businesses in the industries like education, fitness, and bath are closed more in Tianjin, Changchun, Shenyang, Chengdu, and Guangzhou. And so education, we talk about online education and how people are shifting to the online, the cyberspace to continue their study. I mean, that's huge. But at the cost of that is some brick and mortar education institutions are getting the hit. Fitness, we talk about it as well, and bath. Well, when you're worrying about COVID-19, I mean, maybe taking a shower every day is not your priority.
Or does this bath thing, does it make sense to you as an American, Tony?
No, I'm kind of. That's why I'm laughing, because I'm like, what does he mean by bath? Are these places that sell, like, for example, we have Bed Bath and Beyond in the States. So what do you mean by bath exactly?
Think Roman times when when it was the part of the urban infrastructure to build public baths, and people just go there and just
okay. Yeah, we don't really have those back home. I mean, you have
nothing
spas.
shady by the by.
Right.
It's kind of like for those who well, I think these days most people would have at least a shower at home, but some people maybe want to be in a bathtub, or some people possibly want to, I don't know what that's called, when 春游,
What does that mean?
Okay, language studio. 搓泥 refers to the act of massaging your back so you can get all the
that layer of
stuff.
The layer of
Oh, it's like scraping. You're removing like a layer of
Yeah.
your skin off
Yeah.
of the top, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We have spas back home. There's different places where you pay an arm and a leg and an eyeball, and you can get in, and then they'll give you a really good massage. And but
they don't perform this so-called scraping on you.
No,
I suppose.
no,
It's kind
that's
of gross, but
specific
apparently
to Asia, I think.
but
It's a cultural thing. It's not even throughout the country. I mean, back where I came
Absolutely.
from, we didn't have this public bath thing, and so it was. It was emotional traumatic for me to step into the bath in school.
Oh.
In university. It's like do I keep the pants or do I not?
It's funny because I had that same experience, when I went to Japan. That was my first experience to go to a public bath, and it was just like everyone was walking around naked, and I was like, I was the only one with a towel wrapped around, and it was so awkward, and I don't look like anyone there, so they're just staring at me like, why is this guy wearing a towel? Go ahead and drop it. And I'm like, it was really uncomfortable.
Oh.
So yeah, I could totally see how that would be impacted by this this pandemic, because no one. I mean, I'm not going there to sit around other people's fluids and just kind of sit in this bath, and
you can't wear a face mask
you
there.
can't wear a face mask. You're trusting that everyone there is pretty good to go, and that's just that experience would be totally different these days.
So in southern China, in Yangzhou City, and then in northeast China, I mean, there are people who make a big deal out of this. I mean, a friend of mine from northeast China told me that, we don't take bath lightly. When we want to take a bath, we almost spend a day there. We first we go take a bath, and then we go eat something. When we have had enough to eat, we go and continue to take the bath, and then it's on and off. It's a whole day thing. It's kind of a getaway.
And that's not something that you can digitalize.
No.
I mean, there's just it's not the same. I mean, you have to actually be there. You're kind of paying for the experience, almost like stepping out of the the naked bath places, but like the bookstores. I think a lot of people go to bookstores to go in and kind of sit down and relax. You kind of like, I used to love Barnes and Nobles back in the States.
Yeah.
And really cool place. They had these, they headed all of the sections. If you wanted to go and learn about relationships, how could I make my relationship better? They had a relationship section, and that was kind of fun. But now a lot of people don't really want to go because of this thing, and so it's also hurting this type of place as well. We already talked about gyms a million times, and it's hard. Some things you can digitalize, but some things it's you really have to be there. And I think for a lot of these business owners, they have to shift gears, and I think that's the part that's you mentioned under 5 years it's tough. There was a statistic by the Small Business Administration saying anything under 5 years, you've got a 95% chance of failing, which is that's pretty discouraging, I think, for people who want to start their own thing.
And that's why I think the entrepreneurs, they're daredevils, and they're really that's investing a lot into something so uncertain. But,
especially nowadays.
And if you manage to make it, then that's really great. But when you don't manage to make it, what kind of consequences are we looking at here when it comes to small businesses?
Well, 35% of the shops that got their license revoked and cancelled from January to November 2020 had a registered capital ranging from 100,000 yuan to 1 million yuan, and followed by those with a registered capital ranging from 1 to 2 million yuan, and that's 29%. And then so the bigger you are, the less likely you are to fall. And problems that come from the COVID-19, and that is some financial burdens. If the whole family relied on the income of the small business, could be a falafel stand or a deli, it would be difficult for them to cover the family expenses. And then according to the data of the fourth National Economic Census in 2019, a self-employed business would offer 2.37 jobs on average, and it was not difficult to imagine how many people would be affected by the closure of these businesses, and we're saying about 1 million small shops. And in particular, it was worth noting that it was very difficult for women urban migrant workers and the elderly over 40 to get re-employment. I think we talk about this as well on the show.
Yeah, middle-aged and elderly. How's that? Those aged above 40. And this part, just as we were sort of chatting about the topics right before going on air live, we're just Liming and I were just kind of talking about when you look at the general economy or maybe more manual work kind of jobs as opposed to maybe office jobs, and the same age of an employee could be facing quite a different situation. For example, if you work an office job, I'm assuming somebody who works in front of the computer and has at least a bachelor's degree, when you're 40, that might be like the golden age of your career or whatnot.
You only begin to have midlife crisis.
Of course, in some tech companies, maybe if you're 40 and you're still employed, then you've either really made it to the management level or
they're trying to process you out.
To put it mildly. So that depends. And also, if you're 40 and you're working as maybe a sanitation worker or one of the jobs that requires a lot of the heavy lifting, physical labor and all that, and then 40 years old might be considered as, approaching a little bit of the elderly employees in that particular profession. So it really varies, and it's important to sort of be able to study and understand how it works for these different kinds of jobs in the workforce to come up with policy that can address to the real kind of needs of people.
In general, I think your description is accurate. But then specifically in China, for people working in the perhaps the manual labor sector, it's a different story. I mean, we also covered this on Roundtable as well, how the young people these days are not willing to join the workforce in this section. And so as a result, we see on construction sites and other perhaps factory floors, people getting older and older. So there shouldn't be an issue of them getting a job because these business owners on these particular occasions are already facing difficulty recruiting people what they need, especially young people. But what we are seeing right now is, again, what happens to a lot of brick and mortar outfits, and that is when you have a factory floor, when you have to comply with this quarantine and prevention measures, chances are the factory and the business is going through a lot of difficulties as well. So they might have stopped or suspended their business. And then construction sites, let's not even begin to talk about the kind of measures that's required to make sure that the workplace is safe for everybody. So it's more about the direct impact of COVID-19 rather than the economic repercussion of it.
Yeah, in the States, small businesses are really everything. I mean, I read somewhere that it makes up over 99% of the jobs. Not the jobs, but the companies in the U.S. And they, I guess, to be considered a small business, you have to have under 500 employees, which makes up a substantial amount. So you have to, and even then, for most companies, about 92% employ under 100. So there's just so many companies in the States that would qualify as small. And so and earlier you guys mentioned about the jobs that are offered every year, 1.5 million a year in the States, these small businesses, contribute. So I think it's a really big part of the United States, structure in terms of work. And so, this year it's been forcing everybody to make some adjustments, and a lot of people haven't been able to make it in that regard. So a lot of jobs have been lost. So it's really rough.
Well, for shuttered small business owners, what kind of relief or help is most needed?
Well, I know in the States, they were talking about, I think Biden just signed a 1.9 trillion, I guess, economic stimulus pack. I'm not getting it, so it's like, so I don't exactly have the details in front of me, but
$1,400 for every adult. Is it?
yeah, I mean, I think that's it's something. It may be I guess a sigh of relief for the short term, but I think that it's yeah, there's a new normal that still people need to adjust to because that's only gonna, for a lot of businesses, I think that's a drop in the bucket.
Right.
For sure.
And that's for individuals, right? So just so every citizen, as long as you've paid for Social Security, I would think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I'm living in China, and I pay the Social Security here, so I don't think that necessarily applies to me. But I don't know. There's so many loopholes. I have to make sure I have to read into it.
Right. Yeah. And what about here in China? Like, what are some of the measures that have been rolled out so that small businesses can benefit from it?
Again, we are acknowledging that the businesses that are worst hit by COVID-19 are most likely brick-and-mortar stores, and therefore they have to have a physical existence somewhere. And that physical existence is costly in many cases, and we're speaking about rent. So even at the height of COVID-19 here in this country, we're talking about how the government was calling for rent exemption or rent reduction, and they were able to do this to state-owned enterprises or businesses renting a premise owned by state-owned enterprises, and there have been concrete measures to do that. And then in the private sector, if the property or if the place is privately owned, I think the regional governments are making the call. And I think in some cases the landowners or landlords would see a reason in implementing this rent exemption or cancellation, because really looking back, we see now many businesses, they've closed down and leaving the place empty, and this would lead to economic loss on the part of the landowner, property owner as well.
I'm wondering if they will allow virtual offices to come back. Because I know for a while, I mean, a lot of people were doing that. They would just register the business in just one place, but it's not actually a physical place. It's kind of like a mailbox,
a parking lot.
Yeah, but then later they started cracking down on that, where you actually had to register your business at a specific place, and obviously right now, I mean, that's really expensive. So
I can see how this is a problem in the U.S. because you have zoning laws.
Yeah.
But I haven't read any reports about this here in this country and here in China. So it's likely that they could turn online or to a virtual address, and that's one way to do it. And then the other aspect of alleviation or a way out perhaps is to try and reduce the cost of human resources, and therefore there was a call on. It wasn't a call, it was a concrete measure taken to sort of exempt business owners from paying their share of the Social Security payment and for a period of time, or they were suspended for a period of time. And so in both ways, some were reduced, some were suspended for a while. So that's one way to sort of take off the burden on the business owners. To some extent.
But the service carries on. It's
right.
Just so basically giving out kind of free service for X amount of time just because of COVID-19, and it has had that kind of effect on so many people. And for a lot of these small businesses, I guess the lifeline for them is really just to have some cash and to be able to apply for loans,
right,
and possibly grants in some cases to your local government, and that all becomes something pretty essential and crucial to stay afloat. And like Liming said, I think this is one of the areas of the economy that even if you're bleeding a little bit right now, but it's better to keep them alive, because when things get all that much better and the weather gets warmer, as it seems now, and when people and consumers can come back to visit these places, we know things will get so much better. You're listening to Roundtable. Coming up next, more discussion. Stick around, everybody.
Informed opinion and heated debate. Find out what's got China talking and join us for your roundtable discussion.
You're listening to Roundtable with myself, He Yang, joined by Tony Reed and Lai Ming. Coming up, Consumer Rights Day raises awareness for individuals to fight back against questionable business practices. What are the areas that attracted more consumer complaints than others from 2020 to where we are at now? And our special segment, Motivational Monday, coming your way. That's when we give you that adrenaline shot for the start of the week. Our podcast listeners can find us at Roundtable China on Apple Podcast. And another way to get in contact with us is to send us a voice memo or a voice question to aezfmmeldingcloudcomrssprogram12691832. We air your audio question first and give you a reply on the live show. That is how the Roundtable Heart-to-Heart segment works. And now on Roundtable, as we continue our discussion. March the 15th marks World Consumer Rights Day. Observing the day as a chance to demand that the rights of all consumers are respected and protected, and to protest against market abuses and social injustices which undermine those rights. So, I guess, what is this year's theme, and what do we know about World Consumer Rights Day, which is kind of a big deal here in China?
Yeah, well, I guess it happens every year, and it's more than just making sure you get a good deal on a new car. It's about the right to access the basic things that we need to live, including food and shelter and safe drinking water. It's about making sure, I think another example would be making sure your television doesn't break after 3 months after you buy it, and also that your car has the features and technology to keep you safe, and that the data, companies don't collect too much information on you. It's a lot of things. I think for some people it could be a matter of life and death. And this day was apparently inspired by one of the U.S. presidents. It was Kennedy, actually. And he, spoke on this issue, on the rights to safety. Well, 4 things, really. The rights to safety, the right to be informed, the right to choose, and also the right to be heard. And this was in the Consumer Bill of Rights. And I guess in 1985, the United Nations added 4 more protective measures. And this was the right to satisfaction of basic needs, the right to redress, the right to consumer education, and the right to a healthy environment. And I think that's why this year we're kind of in the midst of a plastic situation that we're trying to address. So this year we're tackling plastic pollution, and I think that's kind of the emphasis of this year's World Consumer Day.
Very interesting how plastic pollution, or the tackling of that, has made its way to consumer rights.
I know, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Yeah. I was like,
But it's definitely an important issue, an environmental issue that we all should pay attention to.
Which is quite interesting, because normally when you think about consumer rights, you want to think along the line that how can we safeguard the interests of the consumers so they don't get swindled, so they don't get shortchanged, so, that sort of thing. So there's sort of a smooth transaction throughout the society. I mean, smooth transaction is really important in an efficient economy, because when you have people worrying about whether they're being shortchanged, whether they're being swindled, whether they're getting what they want, whether they're paying too much, then you can't really have people really willing and just spending their money like without much concern, because I think the health of the economy, it really depends on the efficiency of the economy. And when you have people second guessing their decisions and second guessing whom they're dealing with, then perhaps that's not a good environment.
That's a good point. And also I see just if we take a look at the semantics of the word consumer, how that has evolved in the minds of the Chinese people in the last 20 years or so, or maybe 30 years or so. I remember reading somewhere, the book was written by a European author, and one point said that the European person found to be very strange almost, was that when Americans say, I'm a consumer, and then this word has a lot of meaning, and there's a certain level of pride to that. And for the European guy, he was like, we don't do that. And it's interesting what gets in the American psyche when you self-proclaim that you are a consumer and you have all these rights and you need to defend them, and certain things should be delivered to you, that kind of thing. And I gradually found a similar kind of mindset here in China, which didn't used to exist. When I was a child, I never remember anybody in China saying, 我是消费者, I am a consumer, buying
Proudly,
stuff gives me rights to this and that. But now, I think maybe it has something to do with, first of all, this is a market economy to, a great deal, an extent. And buying things means that you are entitled to, for example, this is not a knockoff. It has to be an authentic product, and also there's customer service, and you should be able to return it in maybe 7 days or a month if you're not happy with it. And there are all these things, these clauses that come with it just as the transaction happens. And I just find that to be fascinating, how I would say this is adding to the consumer psyche that didn't used to exist in this country, but now we're so used to it. And also writing you a bad review if I'm getting something that's not living up to the expectation as the commercial or the advertisement in that virtual shop that had sold to me. And then I'm entitled to write that bad review, and which the virtual store vendors, they don't want.
No, they
they'll
don't.
go to great cost to avoid that.
But I think that's a tool that we use, and it's a beautiful thing where we can actually give these institutions a certain kind of rating and vent. Because sometimes if you don't, I feel like before this was in place, you just had a bad experience. It was your experience. You could go home and tell people. You can go to work and tell people, but in general, it's not going to make a dent in the institution's wallet. They're going to still have a lot of customers, and no one's really going to know about that experience. And so that's something that's beautiful about social media. Now we can actually, share our feelings. We can praise the place, or we can give them some well-needed coaching. So that's beautiful. And in terms of consumerism, I think this competition, since there's just so many different companies around, that we can demand this respect from companies, because it's if Sears isn't treating me right, well, no, I don't think they're treating anyone right now, because I'm not sure they're still in operation. But you could go to another place, I'm just going to go to Macy's, or I'm going to go to
not really doing
Marshalls,
well
or it's crazy. The last time I was there, I mean, these places were still up and running, but I don't even know if they're still around. But my point is, you have a variety or a range. You can go somewhere else and give someone else your money, and that's, I think, a lot of companies, they have to shape up, or otherwise they're going to lose their client base. And so it's a different world. Consumer, you do have power as a consumer, Phil.
Do you think the consumers have what it takes to accept the rise because there are competitions, or do you think somehow the authority has found their presence in a deal between a buyer and a seller? Because this didn't used to be the case, at least from my observation, my personal observation, and my reading of ancient classics. I mean, there used to be a time when people get a bad deal, and they perhaps grunt and say, "Shame on me! I mean, I was blind. I didn't see it clearly." That sort of thing. So, but it wasn't like there wasn't competition out there. Because from my perspective, I think it's more of the role of the authority getting in the way, making sure that people shape up rather than relying purely on the rule of the market.
Right. Well, I think it kind of falls along the lines of enforcement, right? There has to be an enforcing body to make sure that these guys, these companies, these corporations follow the rules, and that we're actually getting what they advertise. And I think that's a bit of a challenge. There's lots of wonderful, colorful, authoritative rules, but if no one follows them and there's no one to actually crack down, that can be an issue. And I mean, I can only speak for in the States, because there are laws that exist on the federal and state level, but they are mainly enforced by attorneys and also government agencies. And the reason I brought that up is because that's the biggest example of when companies don't produce a product that is what's advertised. You have lawsuits.
Yeah. And
there was a really big one that's actually, I think it's still ongoing. I don't think these guys are ever going to get out of the courtroom. But it's called, there's a product called Roundup, and it was supposed to kill weeds that are in certain places where you don't want them. Well, you had workers that would use this product, and it would seep into their bodies,
lungs,
and they got cancer. And so this ended up being a big deal. And I think the settlements are around like $10.9 billion, and it's still going. There's like 125,000 people that are coming forward saying that they have experienced, reactions to the product. So I think that kind of also is part of the whole situation. You have to advertise, hey, look, this stuff is dangerous. If the chemicals are there, you need to be wearing a hazmat suit to make sure it doesn't, get on your skin. All of that needs to be communicated, and that's governments. Sometimes we live in a capitalist world, so it's kind of hard. The government is not going to see everything. And they might even turn a blind eye to it because there's a lot of money involved in it too. So it's like you have to. And I think that's why, attorneys and people being able to come forward and speak on it, just like we talked about the online social media, but in this realm too, going to court. This is probably, if you hit them at their wallets, because we live in a capitalist society. So if you make a lawsuit, that'll send a message to all the other companies like, whoa, you saw what happened to Bayer? Yeah, we don't want to lose that much money, so we have to make some changes. So I guess that's one form of enforcement.
I was just thinking about the balance of power between buyers and sellers, and we were just also talking about small businesses in the first half hour, and how the small businesses on average would hire 2.37 people on average, right? So they are more powerful compared to individual consumers. And I was just thinking, how is it that individual buyers can pit themselves against even small businesses, that are significantly bigger than they are? And how are individual consumers going after bigger tech companies or big retailers? And you raise a good point about the role of attorneys and how they appear to be, the most powerful role or figures in a society, because it's like their powers are feared. On both sides. The consumers could leverage that power to assert their rights, whereas the enterprises, how it's interesting. If the individual consumers can hire the attorneys, what about the businesses that are obviously more financially capable? Shouldn't they be able to hire an army of lawyers and fight it off?
They have in-house counsel. That's on standby. So that's really hard for but if you can have the legal battle and battle it out and within the realms of the law books and figure it out. Although it takes forever to do in the U.S.
It takes time, and you have to have the right evidence, and you have to. There's so many checks that you have to have. Otherwise, you'll just get drained in court. Because they have a team. They got the money. They can just wait you out. Like, how many? Let's see, how many retainer fees can this person pay? Probably 3. Okay, we'll just wait it out, and then nothing happens. So it's really tough.
Right, and that would be a huge financial burden on the party that really does not have that much of a cushion of funds to sit on to pay for the lawyers.
But a lot of times the attorney won't take the case unless they know that they're going to win. And if they know they're going to win, you're going against someone like Bayer, and it's like you have evidence that they can use. then they'll come to you. They'll be like, "What? You have cancer? Really?"
Yeah.
You know, it sounds bad, but they go towards people who have been injured directly as a result of a certain company.
Yeah. And also the profession of an attorney is not always seen in super positive light.
No, not at
There's
all.
the term
No.
ambulance chaser. And yeah, these guys make make a living off maybe sometimes the grievances of people. But, you know, the plaintiff and the accused both have the right to be represented, and
Sure.
that is really important. And here in China, when we talk about Consumer Rights Day, I think about expose, and there's an event that sort of embodies that, and that's the CCTV, Central China Television March the 15th show. Sometimes it's called a gala, but I think that's a terrible translation. So basically, you know what I'm talking about? Like consumer rights issues get exposed at one go on that show. And the next day, like it's making headlines, and then people will be checking all the brands that got mentioned. It's really...
It's a day for the PR people to get really jittery about.
Yeah, so... Well, we haven't watched the show's not on until later in the day, obviously. So what are some of the presumed areas that's garnered a lot of complaints from the year 2020?
Well, some of this, again, this is the year of COVID. And when it comes to COVID, we know there's disruption to people's plans. There's disruption to people's travel plans. So there's been some conflicts on refunding hotel trip orders. I think a lot of this came up over the past year. And then there's also problems in live streaming promotion. Remember how we talk about live streaming has become so popular in terms of retail? Well, not everything is rosy, and in some cases there have been some substandard products being promoted by these live stream hosts, and people get into conflicts over this as well. And what would be some other issues? Well, on previous years, I've seen the 3 March the 15th gala. Some of the issues are closely related to people's livelihood. I mean, the year that I watched, I never felt more strongly about how Chinese market is still developing, is still forming, and many examples were showing how in the regional market, certain manufacturers was able to come up with a knockoff of a famous brand, and they try and produce a package that looks very much like the famous brand, and then promote it, and they were able to get good business in the regional market, and that was really something that caught my attention. And I've since then decided to follow this, to sort of to get a read on how far along we are in terms of developing a nationwide market, and how consumer rights are safeguarded, and certain rules and laws are implemented throughout the country. And this year also there's difficulty to get refund for minors charging in online games and online tippings.
Online gaming.
You know,
refunds.
Yeah, so we fall back to the live stream part. I mean, there are hosts who speak to a certain age group of people, and then they try and convince young minors to unlock their parents' phones and give them generous tips. So apparently, this has caught people's attention in recent years, and hopefully this year it will be an issue as well.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Giving Tony some pretty good ideas.
No, it's just the originality. It's just, I've never heard anything like that before. It's like coaching kids to get money from their parents to give to me, and it's just it's almost like a comedy. That's something you'd see in a movie, but it's kind of cool that people are actually doing it.
Well, sometimes the kids don't need to be taught. They want to, let's say, purchase the next shiny armor in a particular game, and they come up with the idea by themselves, or maybe talk to their friends about it and get some tips. Who knows how to unlock mom or dad's virtual account to pay for some shiny sports car in the virtual world or whatnot. Yeah, so this is completely a different kind of world for the little kids these days than it was for us back in the day. And what else? I wouldn't be surprised if I see more get mentioned, I suppose, on Consumer Rights Day is people being unhappy, having some disputes with the refunds of their trips, hotel orders, and especially during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic when people's travel plans all had to be altered, put aside or whatnot. So there were some disputes that came from that.
Flight tickets, not getting your money back.
Yes, that kind of
that's
thing.
That's a nightmare.
Or just along the way when these disputes get sorted out, not everybody's happy, and you're entitled to get your voice heard. You're listening to Roundtable. Coming up next, Motivational Monday.
Motivational Mondays. Motivational Mondays.
Tony, you're up first to motivate us.
I'm laughing because I don't really know if this comment is motivating at all.
Is that why you were laughing?
That's
I got
why I
the
was
wrong
laughing.
message.
Yeah. Well, this is from a Hall of Famer baseball player in the States. His name is Yogi Berra. Found his
Sounds like
quotes.
goji berry.
I know, right? Well, here he goes. Listen up because I've got nothing to say. And I'm only going to say it once. If you're feeling good, don't worry. You'll get over it. But just remember to keep trying, stay humble, trust your instincts, and most importantly, act. When you come to a fork in the road, just take it. Now, I listened to that, and it kind of made me smile because, a fork in the road, we sometimes hit forks in the road. And how do you just take a fork in the road? You have to either go this way or that way. But I think sometimes we can get really serious when we think about life, and this particular athlete, he kind of has a carefreeness about his and his career and just who he was as a person, and I think there's a certain element of that we kind of have to have. It's we're all of us are kind of adjusting and dealing with a really difficult time, and sometimes it's just there's no life manual. There's no book to this thing. Sometimes we have to learn things along the way and just wing it, So I think that it's just, advice and instinct. Just sometimes it's good to just follow your gut and just be confident in it and just go forward. So I thought that, this quote was just kind of fun and also just, it's not that serious,
So you're feeling good. Get over it. You still need to act.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes simple words and, just encapsulate so much.
Yeah. And it's just not, sometimes there's these words and advice and we read these cool things, but also applying it is a different thing. So just applying it and living it is, just try to put that into your mix up, and I think that things will be okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing, Tony.
Sure.
Lai Ming, what do you have for us?
Well, over the past week, I've been brooding over a little anecdote about our boss. It seems that once she said, if you want to get anything done, give it to the person that's the busiest.
Oh,
and this
I've
really,
heard that before.
And this really got me thinking about time management and how we seem to have endless time if we really put our minds to managing it. And so this week I'm going to share some time management quotes.
Hold on, Lai Ming.
Yeah.
What does she mean by that again?
If you want to get anything done.
What does she mean by it? But this person's already super busy. He's going to be doing more. How is that even going to work?
That means he or she is very good at time management. And, so if you give him or her one more assignment,
they'll get it done.
Well, they'll get it done.
Whoa,
Which
I
is
did not
why-
get that at all.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and the tip about that you know,
Yeah.
the takeaway is don't appear to be busy, you know?
Which is why I've been thinking about time management.
Slack.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that, Lai Ming. Okay.
And then so this is a quote from Schopenhauer, if I'm pronouncing this correctly. And the quote is, "The common man is not concerned about the passage of time. The man of talent is driven by it." And I don't think he's is saying that there are people who are talented, there are people who are common, and some of them are very good at time management and some of them are not. Rather, I think he's saying those who are very good at time management will become talented, and those who are not, they're just wasting their time and see it pass by. Because really, again, to quote the anecdote, I mean, the better you are at time management, the more likely you are to get things done. And with that experience, you're surely to gain more skills and knowledge from this. And then how do we do this? I mean, I share another quote from Victor Hugo. And you start
Hugo.
by having a plan. And he said, "He who every morning plans the transactions of that day and follows that plan carries a thread that will guide him through the labyrinth of the most busy life." So in other words, if you have a plan, if you have a good idea of what you're going to do for the day, for the week, for the month, then most likely you're not going to be lost in the million things that you have to do. And again, to wrap things up, I would share one app or one service that you can rely on, and that is to try and turn to certain apps that can really help you sort things out. I mean, there are apps that are arranged based on the concept of getting things done, and that is how that is you can record anything, write down anything you want to do in the app, and then spend some time to manage them and to classify them into different occasions, different places, a different time, perhaps different persons according to them, and then you will find time to do it. At least that's been helping me a lot in recent weeks.
Oh, very good. Because
Awesome.
I know Lai Ming has a million things to do now as his work responsibilities have been expanded. And so that's what you've been doing, I suppose, with becoming more organized.
And thinking
better,
about the anecdote.
Yeah, and managing your time better. Okay, what do I have for you? It's something pretty simple and sweet. I'll say it now. I just realized, basically, as we're doing this show and every day conducting our lives, you don't know who you're talking to.
Okay.
And you don't know how they're going to take it. Whatever you say. You can be Shakespeare, but you can be taken completely a different way. But I just think that it doesn't hurt if you just extend a hand and give them a moment of encouragement. A word of encouragement from yourself could make all the difference in another person's life, and you just don't know. And just giving that little bit of kindness could mean so much. And I don't have time to share the anecdote, but I'm just promoting kindness every day, a little dose. That's it for today's roundtable. Bye, guys.